Hello, everyone. My name is Jared. I'm a bookseller and the events coordinator over at Capital Books. And we are so excited today to have Laura Jensen Walker here today with Catriona McPherson. And they're going to be leading the event called, let me get the name right. So tonight's event is Laura, Catriona, and possibly Agatha, and we're going to be discussing Deadly Delights, which is the new novel by Laura Jensen Walker. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Catriona, who's going to be leading the interview with Laura. And then from there, they're going to take it away. And throughout the event, if you have questions you'd like to submit, put them in the chat. And then towards the end of the event tonight, I'm going to read the questions and our guests will answer them for us today. So a little bit about Catriona. Catriona is a national best-selling and multi-award-winning author, born in Scotland and lived where she lived until immigrating in 2010. She writes historical detective stories set in the old country in the 1930s, featuring gently born Lady Dandy Gilver. After 8 years in the new country, she kicked off the comic Last Ditch Motel series, which takes a wry but affectionate look at California life. She also writes a strand of contemporary psychological thrillers. A Gingerbread House is the latest of these. Kirka said, a disturbing tale of madness and fortitude that grabs the attention from page 1. Catriona is a member of MWA, CWA, Society of Authors, and a proud lifetime member and former national president of Sisters in Crime. So with that, Catriona, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jared. She sounds great, doesn't she? You thought that was good. Wait till you hear this, because I'm only here to introduce Laura Jensen Walker, my friend Laura Jensen Walker, former Airman Jensen, author of chick lit, memoir, humor, and now counting them three in the last 10 minutes, it seems, cozy mysteries. She is an Anglophile. She is a mistaken drinker of PG Tips when Yorkshire Gold Tea is right there, but, give it time. And she is a Kringleophile as well. Thank you for the 2 slices of Kringles that I picked up at Laura's house when I went round for lunch last week. One for me and one for my husband, but he wasn't there, so I ate them both. And that's going to set the tone, because we are going to talk about books today, but we are also going to talk about quite a lot of baking. Our friend, Gabriel Valjean, who is the most generous man in the mystery community, and that's a deep bench, gave an off-the-cuff strap line to this event. He calls it a rolling pin covered in blood, which is just great. So, Laura, a rolling pin covered in blood, I think is a perfect way to describe Deadly Delights, the second in the Bookish Baker series, about a writer who bakes, a baker who writes, a woman who I try to remember is not you. I really try to think. Now, do you say St. John or St. John?
I say St. John, but I know you say St. John, but yeah.
Teddy St. John. I know Teddy St. John is not you, but she is.
Yeah.
So would you care to kick us off, please, by reading a foodie scene? So
Sure.
No plot, no spoilers from the wonderful Deadly Delights.
Okay, here goes. So here's the book again, everyone. And I actually considered starting off with the beginning in chapter 1, but that's not a good thing to do. So I decided instead I'm going to take you to one of Teddy's baking things. And I have to give a disclaimer and say that in the Walker household, Laura is not the baker, Michael is. And when I started writing cozies, he set up what we call the cozy kitchen, and he would test. He came up with recipes. I had a couple from my grandmother, but basically Michael tested them. And so here we go. So thank you, Michael. Okay, I decided to do some baking the next morning. Fun baking, no troublesome pie crusts for this girl today. I pulled out sugar, flour, baking soda, salt, and vanilla from the baking cupboard. Then I grabbed oatmeal, coconut, chocolate chips, butterscotch chips, and cereal, and set them on my vintage tile countertop. Everything but the kitchen sink. That's what I had named these cookies, everything but the kitchen sink, or sinkers for short. When I was still working in government cubicle world, see, now that's a Laura, that was what Laura did. Every Christmas, my office did a cookie exchange. One year, my coworker brought some cookies I absolutely loved, full of heaps of yummy things, including chocolate chips, oatmeal, and Rice Krispies. What I didn't love was what she called these delectable treats, garbage cookies. Who wants to eat garbage cookies? So I asked for the recipe and I changed it up to make it my own. The first thing I changed was the name. When I made my first batch of sinkers, I used Raisin Bran in place of the Rice Krispies. It was the only cereal in the house, so I improvised. That's the great thing about this recipe. You can change it up with whatever you have on hand. And Michael, I used to say when I started working on these books, and I'd say, oh, we can toss them, whatever. And he goes, Laura, no, recipes, it's a chemical, it's a mathematical, you have to follow the recipe. But he does mix it up and he changes. But I would say, well, can't you just do this? No. So he would always vet what I wrote and vet the recipes at the back. So if you try any of the recipes in either of the books, they will be perfect because Michael vetted them all. I'm just letting you know that.
Thank you, Michael. You don't have to, I mean, I do bake, and you don't, when you're making a cake, you have to stick to you have to pay attention to the chemistry. Yeah. But when you're making cookies, it's stuff stuck together with butter and syrup.
Right. Yeah.
As long as they stick together, and if they don't, granola, who cares?
Right. Yeah.
Right. Now, this is absolutely Laura's night. This is Laura's book launch. But early on, the reason this is called Laura, Catriona, and possibly Agatha is that as well as launching Deadly Delights tonight, we are taking a look back at, got it right here, Murder Most Sweet, for a reason that we'll get into later. And we're also, Laura is very kindly letting me take a little look at my book. It looks like much less fun, doesn't it? The Turning Tide. And so we cooked it up, and I thought, I'm going to read it. I'm going to read a food scene from The Turning Tide where things are not so good, not so sweet, much less fun. My detective and her Watson, her sidekick, have been billeted in a stately home to solve a mystery, and the catering is pitiful, is calamitous. One day when the mistress is not hungry on a Sunday, she goes off to bed, so the maid just puts all the food away, and they're supposed to starve till the next day. So they wait until after she's gone to bed and they sneak into the larder. So here's the only food scene. Thank you, Laura. In The Turning Tide. Alec opened two other doors first before he found the larder, but then he piled the stone pot where the chicken was cooling, a butter dish, a loaf of stale bread from the crock, and a jar of virulent-looking piccalilli into his arms and brought them back to the kitchen table. Do you have piccalilli in the US?
Not that I know of.
Oh, so it's like a bread and butter pickle made with cauliflower, little tiny onions and other bits of stuff covered in turmeric, so it's bright yellow. It's acid yellow.
Ooh.
As if it's been eaten once already, if I can put it that way. He put all that under his arms and brought them back to the kitchen table. See if you can scare up a pint of milk from somewhere, Dandy, he said, and then proceeded to make himself a sandwich that constituted the best meal of the entire case. I could not join him in the consumption of the piccalilli, for even the smell of it was enough to make me wince, and the colour of the bread as it seeped in was revolting. We had to make do with coffee too, since the milk was the usual bluish last gasp of a Sunday afternoon. But as we looked at the wreckage of the chicken, at least for once we were not still actually hungry. Alec pulled off a wing, sprinkled it with salt straight from the pig, and took a bite. Don't stick your fingers in the salt, pig, I said. Isn't there a spoon? He peered and shook his head. Christine's fingers must be in and out of it 4 times a day, he said, and then wiped off most of the crusted salt onto the remains of the chicken wing and licked the last of it. That's as good as it gets for my...
That makes me so hungry.
Really? Blue milk, because they haven't got fridges because it's 1936, and stale bread because it's Sunday, and a stolen chicken. I would rather be in the world of Teddy St. John. Definitely. So, this is not a set-up question. Heaven forfend. I'm going to quote the Kirkus Publishers Weekly and New York Journal of Books reviews about Laura's debut in this series, where they said, respectively, neat twists, twisty plot, and story development is top notch. Laura,
Yes,
would you
Katrina.
tell us about your painstaking planning when it comes to writing mystery novels?
Oh, yes, of
Away
course.
you go.
Well, I'm actually delighted. First, I'm delighted to say that Lonnie is here because it's all thanks to her that I'm writing mysteries. A few years ago, I said, I want to write fiction again. I want to write novels, but I don't want to do chick lit anymore. I've had it with chick lit. I don't know what to write. She goes, you should write cozy mysteries. And I laughed. I went, I said, I could never write a mystery because, excuse me, I suck at plotting. I don't plot. She goes, I'd like you to reframe that and just think about it and say, well, I've never tried that. So I listened to my former editor. I thought about it and I started writing. And here's the thing, for those of you who don't know what a pantser is, that is a seat of the pants writer. And that is what I am. And that is what Katrina is. We both are. So you can write a mystery without being a plotter. Katrina has written 30 books, all mysteries. Hello. So the wonderful thing is, for me, I start with a character, and Teddy came fully formed because she is a bit of me. You know, I really wanted to see in cozy mysteries, I wanted to see a breast cancer survivor who made the choice like I did to go flat. I've never seen that in a cozy. Now, a few people thought, well, that's a bit edgy. Oh, I don't know if that would work in a cozy. But, you know, every woman I talked to said, well, yes, it's just another facet of, you know, what happens, what can happen. And I wanted her, and it's also an homage to, I grew up in Racine, Wisconsin. So Racine, Wisconsin, see, I have that nasal accent still. And we had we grew up around bakeries and Kringle and marvelous food. So it's kind of an homage to that childhood. So I put Teddy in a made up town in Wisconsin. I knew I wanted that. I wanted to show her baking. And I thought, oh, guess what? I think I'll have her write cozy mysteries. What a concept. And so when I had that character, then I just sat down and I sit down, I show up, and I see what happens. I went to a writing seminar once, right before I went to write my first chick lit, when I was terrified. And I don't know about you, Katrina, when you first started in your first novel, if you were terrified. I was absolutely terrified. I don't know. I love novels. I read them all the time, but can I write one? And I just didn't know how to begin. And I went to this class, and I don't say that this is a must, but it helped unlock my fear. And this instructor said, who was a New York Times bestselling author, his name was Davis Bunn, and he said, before you even begin, you need to know how you're going to end. Now, I don't agree with that now, but it unlocked my fear. And I thought, oh, okay, so if I have an idea of what my end is, then I can write towards it. So that's how I started. And yet, each book in the cozies have all changed. The ending is, I think I'm going to go towards this ending, and then I show up and the character takes over the book and you don't know what's going to happen. But I just show up, and I would say to Michael, he doesn't get it. He goes, because he's a planner, and he's like, honey, wouldn't it be faster if you could plot it and maybe figure it out ahead? I said, nope, it's just, I tried that with one of my chick lit novels, and I had to scratch half the book because I tried to plot it and it all changed. Because I don't know, it's a surprise. And to me, I don't know about you, Katrina, but that's what's so fun. I have as much, if I'm having fun writing it, because I don't know what's going to happen, hopefully the reader is going to have fun reading it. And so, and it's worked. I've done 3 mysteries now. And like you said, they said I had a twisty plot, and I'm not a plotter. So that I was thrilled. I ran screaming down the hall to Michael. Ace Publishers Weekly said I have a twisty plot. Hallelujah. So, you know, it can work. But and as Katrina and I talked about this, and I said, part of it is I have read mysteries since the 4th grade in Trixie Belden. So I'm, you know, in my 60s now. I've been reading mysteries for a long time, and you just absorb it. I think it just gets in your pores, and you understand, and it just comes out organically. So there you go. You do not have to be a plotter to write a mystery.
No, I mean, there's so much to pick up on from that. What I wanted to ask you about was, do you subscribe to, I think what I believe now about how I write is what my first draft does, what an outline does for an outliner.
Yes,
so my
exactly.
first draft is awful, baggy, incoherent mess, and then you fix it because it doesn't matter.
Yeah, because the first draft lets me know what's going to happen in the book. The first draft, oh, that's what happens. Now I can take this first draft, which is really a very long outline, and then I rewrite and I throw things out and I put things in and I go, oh, and blah, blah, blah. So, yep, exactly.
You can't do a workshop with blah blah blah, but you can write a book that way. It's like we were talking about this, like being a speaker of English. You can be a native speaker of English. You can speak the language. You don't have to be able to diagram a sentence. You can still speak the language. It's the same thing. And I also believe, and I think this about your books as well, Laura, is that if you don't know who done it as you write, then you can't give it away.
That's a good point. Well, and actually, I'll confess to something. In Murder Most Sweet, when I did write that, I hired a developmental editor on my own, somebody that Catriona had recommended, Terry Bischoff, and she's great. And because I wanted to sell, I wanted to get a book contract, and so I hired her. She read it. She said all sorts of lovely things about the breast cancer and the menopause and seeing a woman in her 40s rather than a 20-year-old. And she says, however, your murderer doesn't work. I was like, oh, that's kind of a problem. So I had to go, oh, all right then. Well, oh my God, what am I going to do? So then I had to go back and go, okay, what about, and then change it. And in Deadly Delights, I wrote that, by the way, in 2.5 months during the pandemic, because the first couple months of the pandemic, I was just laid out with sheer terror, and I couldn't read, I couldn't write, I couldn't do anything. And then it's like I had a book deadline. So it's like, oh my gosh. So I wrote the book in 2.5 months. And it's funny because one of the reviews says it moves along at warp speed. And I went, well, yeah, that's how I wrote it. But I had surprises happen, and I was very near the end, and I had, ooh, what if blah, blah, blah happened? And I ran it by another editor friend, and she goes, oh, I love that. It's very Knives Out. I went, okay. But again, that was like when I was coming up on the last 4 chapters that I had this idea of how to twist something. So, and it was so much fun. I was delighted by that. So it's a blast. I love getting to write cozy mysteries because it's so much fun. And there's lots of tea.
Lots of tea. I've got tea. I've got it in a pint glass, though. This would never happen in Harrods. Sorry about this. So going back to something you said just a bit ago, Laura, that you got a little bit of pushback from someone who's not a woman, and this is breaking news. Men, they're nothing like other people. About whether you could have, sorry, Jared, very nice young man. I forgot Jared was here actually. Whether you could have a breast cancer survivor in a cozy mystery. So I wanted to ask you, again, not a setup question. We did not have lunch in Laura's beautiful garden and set this up. What is your favorite scene in Deadly Delights, and what light does that cast on the cozy mystery?
Well, there were several I could choose from, but I know exactly what you're going to do. So I'm going to, until you do, I will do it instead. So interestingly enough, there was a little bit of an R-rated section, which I made more PG-13, but there is a visit to an exotic dance club. In the first draft, I actually called it a strip club, but we changed it to exotic dance because that's a bit more cozy like. But
same thing.
I know it, but it sounds nicer.
Same thing, right?
It sounds nicer. But I did not go visit one as part of my research. And it was the pandemic. I couldn't. And I actually don't particularly want to ever go to one. But I happen to have a friend, and I won't name her because she might get embarrassed. But she lives in the same town as me. And she's, gorgeous and wonderful. And she's very athletic and works out and all that. Well, I didn't know anything about pole dancing, but apparently there are exercise groups and classes now, and you can go to a gym and there are exercise classes in pole dancing, and it's about strengthening your core, which so I have strengthening your core in the book when they visit this exotic dance club. But yeah, a little bit, my editor went, perhaps just soften it just a teensy bit. I mean, it's okay to have it, but let's just, be a little bit careful. But there is, I never expected my life to be writing about going to an exotic dance club and pole dancing, but I have. And so you'll find it in a cozy mystery.
But to be clear, this is not Teddy St. John kicking back. This is, she has to go for the cake,
because there's a murder suspect.
Choice of entertainment.
There is a murder suspect there that she needs to meet. So that's why That's why she and her friend go undercover, so to speak.
And she does go undercover, doesn't she? Because she puts the knitted knockers
She puts on the knitted knockers. Yes,
Yeah.
Teddy is flat like me. And on special occasions, I pull up my knitted knockers and stuff them in a bra. And Teddy, when she's going undercover, does the same. So,
So I'm thinking, I want this to, I can't remember actually from Murder Most Sweet now, but is it a pivotal moment where, like the inspector from Endeavour, when he's facing down a really bad guy, he says, I shall have to take my hat off. Now I've got this vision of Teddy when things get really gnarly, saying, I've got to put my knockers on.
Knitted knockers. Actually, she does take them out in Murder Most Sweet in front of someone, but who just bursts out laughing. But we'll leave it at that.
So speaking of Murder Most Sweet, the reason that this event is called Laura, Catriona, thank you, Laura, and possibly Agatha, is that, no kind of surprise at all, but still really lovely for Laura's friends and admirers. Murder Most Sweet has been shortlisted for the Agatha Award for Best Debut Novel from the fan convention Malice Domestic, which takes place in normal times at the end of April, beginning of May in Bethesda over in Maryland. Horribly for someone who is a debut author and whose novel is shortlisted for an Agatha. Malice Domestic is not taking place this year. It's happening virtually in July, but next spring, 2022, you will be going up onto that stage to collect rather a special award. So do you want to talk about it, Laura?
Okay. Only if I win. There are 5 people nominated in my category. So.
Oh God, yes, of course. Sorry, did I just say you're going up to accept?
I just said I'm going to collect the award. That's like, I knew only if I win.
You put it out into the universe and it comes back. Sorry, yes, I've skipped a stage. Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I want you to hold up what the winner does get, because Catriona has won 2 Agathas in the past. So she's going to show you what the prize is, which is fairly perfect, I think, since we both love tea. And look, it's a teapot. Isn't that fabulous? Look, best historical novel she got in 2016. So
that is the Agatha Award, which is just fantastic.
Yeah,
I think that's why I've got you skipping that boring stage of having to get Laura, because and it works. I keep them on a shelf here. I don't use them every day, but you can make tea in it. In fact, I remember when I won that one, saying, "Oh, thank you. It'll never see Lipton's." And then thought, "Oh, that's quite good."
Yeah, thank you. Exactly. Would you explain to the people who are the people that vote on? Because Michael very kindly, he started telling all of his friends, Laura is up for an Agatha and it's the Oscar in the Mystery World. And I said, no, not the Mystery World, the traditional Mystery World. So would you explain that just a bit, please?
Yeah. So Malice Domestic honors the traditional mystery in the tradition of Agatha Christie. So cozy mysteries and things like Louise Penny's mysteries. And so not slashers, not torture porn, not, really The Wire wouldn't be, part of that world. And it's voted on by the people who attend the conference. So people who are attending either last year or this year vote on their favorite debut novel, and all the other categories as well. But it is a big deal, as Joe Biden said with one extra word that I won't use. It's a big deal to win that Agatha, and especially for your debut, because that's a fantastic kickstart. And I think to be nominated, you with 4 other people have been picked out of all the heaven knows how many mysteries were published during the whole of 2020 down to the final 5. So, and that is going to be on your flyleaf in every book you publish for the rest of your life.
Yep.
You're Agatha nominated. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Massive congratulations.
Thank you.
Can you tell me how you found out and how cool you were?
Yes, I got a phone call actually from somebody on the committee. They said, hello, and I can't remember the lady's name because I was so taken aback. And she goes, and I'm delighted to inform you that Murder Most Sweet has been nominated for an Agatha Award. And I'm going, what? And I run into Michael and I went, oh my gosh. I just couldn't believe it. Because as you said, there's so many people that wrote mystery novels in the last year. And you know, it's amazing to me. And they're not all cozies either. I mean, a couple of the people, it's a more traditional, I think one's a PI. I read one of them by Erica Ruth Neubauer, someone you and I both know, Murder at the Mena House, I can't remember, which is a wonderful, set in Egypt. I loved it. It's fabulous. I haven't read the other ones yet. I hope to before the awards, but there are 5 different, you know, there's another cozy, I think it's a paranormal cozy, Esme Addison. And then the other 2, I don't really know anything about, so I want to read them. But anyway, I was thrilled beyond belief and shocked and delighted. And you know that saying that people who are up for an Academy Award always go, oh, it's an honor just to be nominated. And I used to always think, oh, right, what a load of tosh. See, I'm doing my British words now. But truly, because as you said, for the rest of my life, I'm not even thinking, truly, I'm not about winning, because there are, you know, I don't have a clue. And I don't necessarily know that many people in the mystery community or have that many fans yet. But she says yet. But I'm delighted. And I can, for the rest of my life, say Agatha-nominated author Laura Jensen Walker. And that to me is very great. And, you know, maybe we'll put that on my tombstone. Agatha-nominated. You know, so anyway.
On the bright side.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the thing to remember about the debut category is no one's got a slew of fans because they're all debuts.
Okay,
so,
good. Well,
yeah,
they did.
That's okay. And I think it's wonderful that they phone you up. And I think, you know, why can't life be fun? Instead of just sending a boring email, the person who's the head of the committee, who's organising the Agathas, phones people and makes them happy. That's got to be a great day in her life, right? That's a good day in her year.
You get a phone call too?
Yes.
Yes, good.
And I didn't pick it up because I was working. I had do not disturb on, so I got a voice message. But that means I can keep it. And
good.
I got it. Yeah.
Love.
Yeah. So you have said that you do not bake, that Michael is the baker, although you do buy a mean kringle.
Thank you.
But I know that you are a aficionado of all baked goods.
Yes.
Do you have a baking success or a baking disaster that you would like to share?
Yes, I have 2 things I'm going to share. So first of all, I grew up, my mom and my sister and I, every year at Christmas, it was baking Christmas cookies. Loved it. And, you know, it would get a little harried sometimes because we have all these, you know, there's in our family there, we have to have cutouts and you decorate the cutouts and then you have to have this and blah, blah, blah. But for me, as my mom has passed, unfortunately, and, you know, I hope she's looking down and seeing my success now. But my sister stopped, she got left, was not interested in baking. But for me, it is not Christmas unless there are peanut butter blossoms. Have you ever had a peanut butter blossom, Catriona? Oh, well, do you like peanut butter and chocolate?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's basically a peanut butter cookie, but then you roll it in sugar and then you bake it. And then at the very last minute, you pull it out and you stick a Hershey's Kiss in the center of each one, stick it back in the oven for a few seconds. And then so it melts into it a little bit. And it is not Christmas in our house without those wonderful peanut butter blossoms, which I love. Well, a couple years ago, I don't even remember when, Lisa that's my sister. She did come over and she and I and Michael's sister decided we'd do cookie baking. And we were just goofing around and being silly. And somehow or other, because we were talking too much and not paying attention, I put in salt instead of sugar. Now, how do you do that? I have no idea how that happened. So needless to say, that batch of cookies was ruined. But I did later make my own batch because I can't have Christmas without peanut butter blossoms. But I'll tell you a real quick one with Michael's. As he was, another thing growing up in Wisconsin, and my Aunt Mary will remember and love this. In addition to kringle, there's something called Danish layer cake. And that was at every birthday, and it's the most amazing, and it's a very moist yellow cake, and it's got ribbons of raspberry filling and custard, alternating ribbons of custard and raspberry filling, and then delicious buttercream frosting. And so I wanted that to be a part of Murder Most Sweet. So Michael started experimenting to figure out how to make this, and he did. But in the experimenting stage, the first yellow cake was very, very dry. It was like, oh my, and it was a lot of work. And then he made homemade custard. He'd never made homemade custard in his life. And there's something about putting it in these little things and putting it in the oven and having water. I couldn't even tell you, but it came out.
I can tell you, but
it was just like, It was like, oh, that's quite thick, and it was very rubbery, and so that didn't work. But finally he achieved it. But he has said, you know what? It was a lot of bloody work. He said, next time, I think I'll just use a yellow cake mix from Duncan Hines because it is quite, and bird's custard.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah, because
if God had meant us to make custard, he wouldn't have invented birds, right?
yes.
So what these little things with the water and the oven, what Laura means is a bain-marie.
What is it called? What's it called?
It's called a bain-marie, French.
Okay.
A water bath.
Oh, a water bath. Okay. See?
Okay, but now I know that, but what is yellow cake?
Yep. It's just a cake that's yellow.
How? Turmeric, like piccalilli? No.
No, I don't know actually, because I didn't make it. He did. I don't know. Yolks. I guess you use yolks instead of the whole egg. I'm not exactly
okay.
Sure. If anybody else knows, okay. Oh, Pam, my friend Pam is saying eggs. So yeah.
I think yellow cake is what I call cake.
Oh.
Pam, is this like 4-4-4-2? So 4 ounces of flour, 4 ounces of butter, 4 ounces of sugar, and 2 eggs. That yellow cake, because that's what I call cake.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm
not the baker, remember?
Angel cake and all these fancy American cakes. You think, what's that? Cake.
Yeah.
Cake with different colors of icing on it.
Well, tell us about your baking disaster.
Oh, my baking disaster. Oh, my biggest baking disaster ever was probably trying to make profiteroles. Do you call them cream puffs?
Yes.
Profiteroles?
Yes.
I think we're so divided by this common language.
Yeah.
So I've got a friend who always, if she's too busy to make pudding, which is what we call dessert, she said, I'll just make a profiteroles, like a croquembouche, a tower of stuffed profiteroles with chocolate icing and glued together and everything. She's always half hammered because she starts early and she's doing 17 other things. So if she hasn't got time to be making meringue or something, she just makes a choux pastry, makes profiteroles. So I got the idea partly from her and partly from watching every season of the Great British Bake Off. If you watch enough of it, you truly believe you can bake. Like when you watch subtitles, you come out of the cinema thinking, I can speak Japanese. I'm sure I can. So my biggest baking disaster ever was when I gave up on cookies and cake and bread and things I can make and tried to make choux pastry, make profiteroles. It just came out like it was one thing. It wasn't lots of things. And the one thing that it was an omelette. Oh. And it wasn't even a very good omelette, but it was horrendous. I was so embarrassed. But then I just made a cake because I thought, well, that's a failure. So I'll just knock up a cake.
There you go.
So, not so bad. Now that we've mentioned it, we've got to keep. How many people here watch the Great British Baking Show?
Yay. Are we the only
Jared, you are their core demographic, and yet no hands going up. Sorry, I'm reading the recipe for yellow cake. I love it. And so because there is a sort of Great British Baking Show element in Deadly Delights, although did you have to run it past the lawyers? No, you haven't.
No, because, we didn't use Great British Bake Off, which that is trademarked. So we did Great British Baking Show. And I just said similar to it. And I mentioned Paul Hollywood, but no, I asked my editor and she goes, no, that's fine. So it's like, okay. It was just that having a contest in Lake Potawatomi, Wisconsin, their own version, a small town version of the Great British Baking Show. So
I did slightly stop listening when you said Paul Hollywood and just went off into he's dreamy. But I think he'd be a very bad boyfriend. I don't think I think you should stick with Michael and I might stick with mine.
Yeah.
Because he's pretty to look at and then he opens his mouth. So from how many series is it? How many is it? Like 8 or something seasons of the Great British Baking Show? Do you have a favorite moment? Or is there anything you need to get off your chest where you think the judges got it wrong? What's your...
Well, I'll tell you 2 things that I loved the year that Nadia won. Remember, isn't she wonderful? And she now has her own show that I've been watching that has been delightful in the pandemic because talk about a delightful person. She's so bright and lively and happy. And on the show, when she started, she was so shy and she always dressed in the darker colors. And now everything's very colorful and she loves baking the way that I love writing and tea. So you just see that and it emanates from her. And so I'm thrilled to bits that she won. I just finished recently watching, and I believe it was the season that they had to tape during the pandemic. So everybody had to be together and isolated, and you couldn't have your families or anything. And I was a little disappointed that the young boy, what was his name? Was it Peter? Peter won. The young boy, the good, he's like the youngest one that's ever won.
The Scottish one, the one from Edinburgh.
Yes,
yeah.
He's the youngest person that's ever won the Great British Bake Off. And there was another man that came down to the finals with him, and he had been very unsure and insecure when he started, and he just blossomed and was amazing. And I really wanted him to win. I thought he should have won instead. And I was like, I know the young kid was good, but I thought, is it because he's young? Or so to me, they did say it was neck and neck, and it was one of their hardest decisions and the closest they've ever had. What about you?
I agree. That pandemic, that lockdown where they were all bubbled in, or pod, you call it here, don't you? They were in a pod with the production team and the contestants, and they just stayed in a hotel with Prue Leith and the presenters for the duration. And I thought I didn't agree with the people who went out early. I didn't think Max should have left. Spoiler alert for anyone that's not watched this yet.
Sorry,
I didn't think Max should have left. I didn't think the young woman who went out first should have left. And I didn't want, I just didn't agree with lots and lots. And I didn't want, what's her name? I can't remember what her name is, Soraya, that left.
Oh, no, she was near the end. She made it to 4, right? The top 4. She should have stayed. She should have been in the top 3. I agree.
But I think it's the same thing for anyone who really loves it. Nadia Hussein is the absolute, you just want to take her home and put her on your mantelpiece. She's so adorable and so positive. And her story of that she has a panic disorder, that she's very shy, and her husband, unbeknownst to her, or he really, really pushed her into applying, and she looked so worried. Just remember her really expressive eyebrows and these huge frightened eyes like a horse, just so terrified. And somehow, through the experience of having to make herself go out and do this every single week and be away from her family and get on a train by herself and things like that, she's completely blossomed. So it came to be about more than baking, I think. Oh, I might just watch the final again tonight after this, Laura. It was lovely. So we sort of talked about, do you have separate kitchen tips? I know we were talking about kitchen tips.
Okay, well, I'm just going to give you one of Michael's. And some people, I didn't know this because, of course, I don't bake. But we got a couple recipes in Deadly Delights from some friends of ours. And there's a friend in town, another man who came, his name's Michael Johnson, and he makes a delicious peach cobbler. That's amazing. So I got his recipe. But Michael added a little tip that Michael didn't, that's funny. My Michael added a tip that Michael Johnson didn't have. And he says, when you need to peel your peaches, you put the whole peach into almost boiling water for 30 seconds. And then you immediately cool it under cold water and the peel slips right off. And he said, it's like tomatoes, or as you say, tomatoes.
Tomatoes.
The same thing, yes. And I never knew that, but I'm never going to be making a peach cobbler. So, but Michael does.
What it is. What's the top in a peach cobbler made of?
Oh, it's a lovely crumbly mix. It's like a pie, but it's in a cake pan. So,
right.
Oh, you've never had peach cobbler?
Peach, but I might start. I could start now.
There's the recipe in the back of the book. You need to make it.
I'll give it a go as long as there's no choux pastry involved. So Michael's name has come up.
Yes.
So I was wondering, if you carry on for a long time with Teddy St. John, could you see yourself publishing a Teddy St. John cookbook?
Well, I don't know, because that might destroy our marriage, because Michael and we did one book together years ago called God Rest Ye Grumpy Scroogey Men. And that was another book from Lonnie. Thank you, Lonnie. And we're very different. We started writing in the same room. He was at one computer, I was at the other. After 4 hours, I couldn't stand it. And I said, honey, you need to get out of here and you need to write somewhere else, because we are very different. And he couldn't believe the way I wrote, because he's very methodical. He plans things. He'd been thinking about the book and he had in his mind exactly what he was going to say, and he'd made notes. And as he put it, and excuse me, He said, you sit down and you kind of vomit all over, and then you just pick out the best bits. That's what that's how I write.
What a nerve.
I know. And it's unfathomable to him. And so when he read my first draft, he was terrified to tell me how bad it was. And I said, oh no, but his was perfect. Because he'd been thinking and planning and writing notes. So when he wrote his, it was golden. Mine was just
not annoying at all.
I know. So do you think I really want to do it again? No, I don't think so.
I just think of you as such a solid pair. Like you're such a shining example.
Oh, well, thank you. Unless we're driving in Europe, unless we're driving in England on the wrong side of the road. No.
Wrong side of the road, wrong side of the car, stick shift.
Yes. With your left hand, forget that.
Wales. Driving in Wales, because as well as that, by the time you've deciphered the name of the place, you're 5 miles past the sign.
Exactly.
Even I think that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you heard it here. They're not solid as a rock. They're hanging by a thread. In my family weddings, they play, well, now they do single ladies for the youngsters and then solid as a rock for all the old timers. But my sister always said, as long as we can sing hanging by a thread instead of solid as a rock, that's a bit more honest. But she's quite dry. So you're going to stick to books, no cookbooks. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, that's a completely gratuitous story about my sister and chocolates, but I'll tell you another time, Laura. So we did say, having read a food scene, that you were going to read a book scene with Teddy the Reader. Is it Teddy the Reader or Teddy the Writer?
It is Teddy the Reader. So this is Teddy's gone to her best friend Shar Jorgensen, which I named after my aunt, who's passed on, my aunt from Wisconsin. She owns a bookstore in town in Lake Potawatomi called the Corner Bookstore. So she's going to see her friend. And so she says, after taking my leave of Colleen Murphy and buying, because she was at a yarn shop talking to this woman, and buying a few skeins of yarn for taking up her time, I booked it over to the Corner Bookstore. There I discovered my best friend deep in conversation with Margaret Miller about the latest literary fiction. Shar, the brainiac of our Musketeers trio, loves her literary fiction, all that thoughtful, leisurely, Pulitzer Prize-winning stuff that I never understand. Margaret, Sophie's grandmother, loves it as well, so the two of them are always comparing notes. Don't get me wrong, the writing is sublime in literary fiction. I marvel over the gorgeousness of the language the authors use and find myself highlighting entire sections in the books that Shar gives me. When I come upon a perfect sentence, I will stop and revel in the beauty of the author's words. Occasionally, I even retype the sentence, print it out with full author attribution, of course, and stick it on the bulletin board in my home office as inspiration for my own writing. But that doesn't mean I get the book. There's usually some profound, inscrutable meaning that I fail to comprehend. And that's okay. I never claimed to be deep. And that is why I write like Teddy, cozy mysteries. I write to entertain and to make people laugh and to give them an escape.
So is that Teddy channeling Laura?
That is very much Teddy channeling Laura.
About literary fiction.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate the beauty.
Twitter, Richard Dawkins. Ugh, pause to shudder. Sorry. No judgment. Richard Dawkins was whining about Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis, or Metamorphosis, I don't know how you say it, saying, this is supposed to be a classic. What's it about? If it's science fiction, I don't know what it's about. And you think, oh, come on. That put me on the other side of saying, oh, come on, you're a good scientist. You should absolutely stick to science, because as soon as you talk about anything else, Richard Dawkins, you reveal yourself to be a total numpty. He was so sour about Kafka. And you think, oh my God, if you think Kafka's impenetrable, there you go, then you should stay away from, Thomas Pynchon. You should stay away from lots and lots and lots of literary authors. So I've just lost the thread of what I was going to ask you. When you were reading there, I thought of a brilliant question to ask you, and it has totally gone. So as I said, I know what it was. If you start books, do you stick with them?
Not always. I've been in a couple different book clubs, And initially people would say, you must finish the book. But you know what? I'm in my 60s now, and life is short and you don't have a lot of time, and I love to read. I read at least a couple books a week. And so if I'm reading something and I will give a book a little bit of time if it's slow when I'm getting into it, and I'll give it more. And that one book club I was in, they said, let's give it at least, you have to at least read the first 100 pages. I've stopped that too. It's like, I'm sorry, if it doesn't get me and I'm not into it. Now, if there's, and there are books that everybody says it's amazing, it's fabulous, it's great, and it just doesn't work for you for whatever reason. So no, I have my to be read stack is so huge that there's not enough time to stick. If somebody's asked me to read their book for endorsement or something, that's a different story. But no, I think life is too short to put up with books that don't interest you. I'm not going to do it. I'm not in college anymore. It's not a requirement. Why in the heck would I keep reading something that's not enjoyable or that is not moving me?
Yeah, I'm the same. I used to finish everything like a good girl.
Yeah.
And those days are completely over. So I am going to ask Jared to pass on any questions that have come in the chat box. But while people are thinking, since we're talking about books, I wondered, Laura, if you would admit to an unread classic. I will too.
Sure. Well, I mean, which
one
one should I pick? There's so many. Moby Dick. Never read Moby Dick. Never.
No one's read Moby Dick.
No, don't want to read Moby Dick.
No one's ever read it.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
And I've never read Ulysses by James Joyce, and that's never going to happen.
Of course you haven't. No one, or how could you? That was one of the ones that I did at university. I didn't read it. I did it. Oh, yeah. Actually, do you know? Strangely enough, the most, I heard this on QI, so it must be true. The book that people lie about reading most is 1984.
Oh,
That's
really?
the book that people claim to have read and they haven't read it.
I read that.
I have read it, but as a linguist, but I didn't own a copy. But when I bought a new copy, it's really thick. And I'm sure when I read it, it was tiny.
I thought so.
I don't know what's happened.
Yeah.
That it's quite a doorstop now. Okay. Right. To make you look more erudite, I'll admit as well, I have never read, sorry for this, Dickens.
Ever? No.
Nothing. Not even A Christmas Carol.
Oh my. How could you? Well, okay. All right.
No judgment. I know. I admitted to it a couple of years ago that I'd never read Nancy Drew or Dickens, and someone sent me some Nancy Drew, but no one said. I think we got it because I think Neil's read lots of Dickens. I think what happened was I started with Martin Chuzzlewit, and I think don't start with Martin Chuzzlewit. I think that's what went wrong. So, favorite book this year from all these 2 books a week that you read, or ever, whichever?
I struggled to read during the pandemic initially. I tried several mystery novels too that everybody raved about, and until I picked up Louise Penny's All the Devils Are Here, and I adore every book of hers I've read. I think she's one of my favorite authors. I loved it. And one of my favorite books of the past decade is very easy. I've read it 5 times. The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. I adore that because anything World War II England, I'm in. It was beautiful. It was moving. I cried every time. Love it. My favorite book of the past decade.
Oh, interesting. I agree about Louise Penny, and you will meet her at Malice.
That would be exciting.
She's so nice, but not kind of like sickening nice, not like sugar cookie nice. She's good. No, she's not nice. She's good. Goodness just kind of shines out of her. And she's so well dressed and her hair's fantastic. And yet no one hates her. She's just the best person. I adore her. So do we have questions, Jared?
Yes, we have a few questions. So let's jump right in. First question says, Catriona, how does the experience of writing suspense differ from writing mystery when you write it, if it does?
Oh, that's a good question. Thank you. I think I worry more about my characters in suspense thrillers because they're in trouble. So, someone dies in a murder mystery, but your detective is not going to be in extreme peril. in a mystery. So I have nightmares. I have anxiety dreams about my fictional characters when I'm writing suspense. So there's that. And I also feel much more tense to try and get to the end and find out who's still going to be standing, which my husband doesn't understand at all, because you think you're in charge, you're the writer. You don't have to kill anyone. You can make everything work out okay, but you know better, Laura,
Yes,
right?
you're not in charge.
So can I turn that back on you, Laura? What's the difference between writing chick lit and mystery?
Designer clothes. No. No, when I started writing chick lit, you know, I am not a designer clothes person. I don't give a wit about, you know, designer handbags. I don't understand it. I don't understand people paying, you know, $500 for a purse. It's like, what? But, you know, I was brand new. It was my first novel that I ever written. And so I was looking at other chick lit and Bridget Jones' Diary and all these, and everybody talked about, so I was writing about Jimmy Choo's and blah, blah. I don't know anything about that stuff. And I didn't care, but I put it in there. So, you know, that, hello. So for me, I'm cozies are my world. Cozies have tea. Cozies have England or lovely books and little cozy cottages, and cozies are Laura Jensen Walker. Chick lit is not. I did it, you know, and I got a couple award type things, but I don't ever want to write it again. It's just not me. It's not me. But it was, I mean, at that point in my life, I was neurotic, and I'm not now. I'm completely unneurotic and fine, usually. But so it was a good time for me to write chick lit because I used to be neurotic, and that's perfect for writing chick lit.
Huh.
Yeah. But I don't think I could ever write suspense like you, because I don't think I have that gene. But who knows?
You've got to be really cold, I think, the sliver of
Yeah,
ice.
that's it. You are so cold.
I am. Well, no, I'm quite cold about, I don't get upset watching things or reading things.
Oh, I do. Yeah. I can get very upset watching certain things. So
yeah.
Jared,
I can
any
get
more?
angry. I can get.
We do.
Cross.
We have a couple more, and I'm glad that Catriona, you asked that question, because that was actually the next question.
Oh, sorry.
Someone wanted to know the difference between chick lit and mystery, so thank you. We'll go to the third question. Third question says, do you enjoy reading mysteries the same way you did before you started writing them, or do you find yourself studying them instead?
Laura.
I don't study because I was a reader before I was a writer, and it's all about, to me, it's all about the story. And if you capture and captivate me with a good story, you know, there I am in the story. And going back to Louise Penny, when I was reading her, I would just sometimes stop and put the book down and just go, because her writing is so beautiful. And she has there's this goodness that permeates her stories about Inspector Armand Gamache, which is different from many mysteries I've read. And so I'm completely in love with her writing and her characters and her story. But no, I don't. I mean, I have written down some of her sentences because they're so beautiful, but I don't find, I mean, if I read a mystery that's poorly written, then I go, oh, wow, they should have done this, or why did they do this, and blah, blah, blah. But I try not to do that. If I start one that is that way, then I set it aside.
I wonder if it's a pantser thing, because I'm exactly the same. And you do hear people in our writing community say, I can't read while I'm writing.
Oh.
And I think if I couldn't read while I was writing, I wouldn't be a writer, because what a loss in your life to not be able to read, especially when you're writing all the time.
Exactly.
And I don't unweave the rainbow, if I can put it that way, when I'm reading other people's stuff. But I wonder if it's a plotter pantser difference. It might be.
Might be.
Yeah. I get jealous. I mean, I get really like, oh God, I give up. You know, halfway between this inspires me to greater heights, and I'm just going to give up and eat cake, because that's too good. Yeah. Can I ask? I don't know if you've got more questions, Jared, from the chat room. Thank you, everyone. Can I ask Laura, what's next? I know the answer.
Yes, I know you do. Well, right now, I'm not contracted to write any more cozy mysteries. I'm hoping that will happen, but I'm in limbo for that. So meanwhile.
Oh, I think it might.
I hope so. But meanwhile, there are 2 books that have been on my heart for a while. I have written a memoir, and this, now we go to Laura being more serious, which I can be, and a little bit deep. And the memoir is about, it's called Resilient, and it's about overcoming rape, breast cancer, and being evangelical. I mean, I've said it. Okay, now if you're there and you're upset, sorry, but
And can I just say it's an exception to my cold sliver of ice in the heart, because Laura handed me a stapled together manuscript of the book, and I said, "Oh, I won't be able to read it before Tuesday." And I cracked into it whenever I finished the last thing on Sunday, and just sat. It was stinking hot, and I sat and read it, and it broke me. But that might be because it was you, and I know and love you, and I wanted to get in my car and come back to Sacramento and hug you, but I didn't, because that's inappropriate. But yes, it's very, and you say it's deep, but it's still funny. I mean, your voice is still so beguiling, and it's very funny, except when it's not.
Yeah, thank you. But that's the book of my soul, and I had written it a while ago. I've changed it. My agent couldn't sell it in the past because I had no platform. In nonfiction, you have to have a platform, YouTube channel, hundreds, thousands of Twitter followers, whatever. I had nothing. I don't have that many Twitter followers, but I do have a monthly newsletter, et cetera. So I'm hopeful. And then on fiction, this one is the book of my heart. For more than 30 years, I have wanted to write a novel that is set in England during the time frame of World War II, because I was in the Air Force stationed in England in the 70s. I adore England. And I wanted to show, and I'm not going to say the title because I love the title.
Don't say the title, because
I won't. But I've got the first chapter written, but it's about basically England on the home front. You're in a little village in England, and you're seeing how the war impacts the different people in the village. And the first chapter is written, and I had never written historical fiction, and I am loving it. I'm loving the research. So that's the book of my heart. Memoirs.
And that's not a mystery, is that right?
No, it's not a mystery at all, actually. So, and it's not in first person. I've never not written in first person. So that's a big shock.
How do you know? How do you? There's no point in asking you because you're a pantser, but I'm wondering now, how do you structure? How do you know what's going to happen if there's no crime to be solved? Is that scary?
No. Well, because when I did tell my editor, because even though she works for Crooked Lane, which is mystery, they have a new imprint called Alcove Press, which is basically women's fiction. And I said, oh, I've been playing with this idea. And I said, it's kind of like Rosamund Pilcher's Coming Home meets the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society, because there's letters. There are letters between people, and there's letters from the States to people in England, and letters from Berlin to this village. And so I wanted, not that I wanted to copy Guernsey, but again, I used to write letters all the time. When I was stationed overseas, I wrote letters home. And so I just wanted all that in there. So it's all, I don't know, I don't structure. So it'll be a surprise, but I have the first chapter done. I had a couple friends read it. You haven't read it yet, and they said, oh, I'm right there. So I hope, fingers crossed, but that will take a long time to write, because, I can't whip that out in 2.5 months.
Do you know what you're going to have to do, though? You're going to have to learn to pronounce that word that describes a novel written in letters.
Oh, epistolary.
Epistolary.
Right?
I'm pretty sure that's not how I would say it, but I've always shied away from that word because I don't know how to pronounce it. Anyway, we are out of time. Laura, good luck with the nameless World War II homefront novel. Marvelous good luck with Resilient. It is awesome. It's just astonishing, and it's an easy to read, tough read. It's beautifully written, but it will break you. Good luck with the Agathas. Murder Most Sweet.
Thank you. You too.
Congratulations on your launch date of Deadly Delights, which is for sale at Capsule Books on K, and there's a link right there on the right for everyone to buy it who doesn't already own it. And Jared or Catriona, somebody has got to pick a winner, because there's a giveaway tonight. So in the chat, the people here, Jared, you need to pick a winner.
Oh, okay. Oh my, okay. So our winner for tonight, I'm just gonna go, trying to think of the most fair way to do this. I'm just gonna close my eyes and I'm gonna point.
Okay. Okay.
Lee Sauer. I'm sure I pronounced his name. Lee. Yeah, Lee is our winner. Congratulations, Lee. Congratulations, Lee.
Can you, Lee, if you can leave your address for Capital Books, and we will send the book to you.
Yes.
Great. All right. Yes. Thank you, everybody. And thanks to everybody for coming.
Thank you, everyone. Pick up your book at Capital Books, and thank you, everyone, for a great night. And Lee, yeah, go ahead and send me your information before you go. Actually, I'm going to put my email in there. If you can email me, Lee, your name and your contact information so we can get that over to you.
Great.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Congratulations. Well done. Bye.
Bye.
I'm going to end the meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.